All right, well, welcome everyone. And hopefully all of you will walk away with some wonderful out-of-the-box activities to do with your grandkids or your kids or your nieces and nephews.
Before I get into what we're going to do, I maybe tell you why I wanted to do it. Originally I thought this would be Grandpa 101 because there have been a lot of things that I've happened to have done with my grandchildren that probably handy for a babysitter or an aunt or an uncle or grandparent, and I'm sure many of those things you've thought of at one time or another. And my background is that I taught school for almost 40 years, 29 of it over here at the high school. But I didn't teach anything about history, even though I love history. I taught health education. And along the way, the most significant part of my education was not the master's degrees I got, but being a father and finding out what really worked with kids and didn't work. And I think that helped along the way. And I think after I got to be a father, I became a much better teacher. Both my wife and I are committed to making every visit from our grandchildren as interesting and exciting as it can be. We know, like you know, that there comes an age when they want to walk 30 yards ahead of you at the mall and they're not really interested in the stories you want to tell them, so we want to seize the day to spend our time with them as valuable as possible. And I'm sure some of you have come up with some of these ideas already, or maybe many of them, but if I can give you one or two, maybe it'll expand the potential that you can do with those kids. Why do we do all these things with our kids? Well, we want to increase their listening ability, their vocabulary. We want to increase their creative risk-taking. I want them to not hesitate at initiating something, to get involved in something, at trying something that hasn't been done before, and not hide from it, okay? And those are the reasons that we want to draw on the kids to be involved with it. I recognize the value of creativity, of fantasy, of spontaneity, in creating some really interesting things. I think one part of a child's development that we don't spend enough time on is abstract thinking. Instead of turning on the television and watching someone go through their fantasy for them, I think it's really important to try to get them to create their own fantasy and realize it is a fantasy, but that there might be some really interesting things out there. You know, I like to teach them that Da Vinci thought of helicopters and airplanes in the 15th century, that Salman Waxman figured out that you can make something out of dirt that can help cure disease, and that Zuckerberg really only wanted to do, all he really wanted to do was to have a rating system of whether the girls were hot or not when he created the Facebook. So sometimes silly ideas create the best ideas. Over and over again we're shown that ideas were thrown out by someone else, became very valuable when someone had the opportunity and the drive to work on it. I think every day should be a learning day for kids, that there's no throwaway days. There's always something they can learn today. And when our grandchildren are with us, it's kind of gotten to be a habit of them telling us something or teaching us something, and us trying to teach them something, although the balance is starting to get kind of difficult. I want those kids to overcome their fear of failure. I want them to try it. And I want them to get used to partnership learning experience, the synergism that comes from working with somebody else and giving them a chance to throw in their 2 cents, but not giving up on your idea, the mixture and what you can get from it. So I want to get started with this. I've got a list of them. I'll hand out a sheet to you, everything I'm going to talk about, but I'll take a chance to explain them to you. These are things that we do with our grandchildren. You might have already tried, might want to try with your grandchildren, see how it works out, or with the children you're babysitting. That's my granddaughter, Haley. My wife got an emergency call this morning. You know, we had planned on going up to Buffalo after this presentation, but she got the emergency call from my son who teaches at Clarence. He said, "Can you come early?" I thought, oh my goodness, what's happened? Well, in Haley's first grade classroom, there's been an outbreak of lice. And my wife, being a former school nurse teacher, is an expert at combing hair and finding lice. Okay. So she made the emergency trip up, but this is Haley, and really has nothing much to do except she's one of the victims I practice this on. Okay. First of all, you've got mail. I collect antique postcards, but I know another thing that was important to me, because my interest in postcards started when I was a real little kid, when a friend who had a lot of money used to take trips out west, and he sent me a postcard. I'm living on a farm. I'm not going down the street for the whole summer. But he sends me this postcard, and I thought, wow, this is really neat. I got mail. Little kids love mail. If you sent them your telephone bill after you paid it, put it in an envelope, they're going to love it. It's a big deal the day they get mail. So I can't tell you enough, no matter what, when you go away, if you can send them a postcard, could be the cheapest, ugliest postcard going, as long as it's to them. It's really important to them. Then, duck hunting. We have a great place to go duck hunting on the canal. And in the spring, you would be surprised how many hours you can spend over there watching kids hang out with the ducks. Now, it can get a little bit messy, as you see on the pavement there, but for a 3 or 4-year-old, that's an exciting trip. It doesn't cost anything, it's just down the street, and you can work with it. Then, probably you've seen the talking tree. Now, you can get these things and put them on your trees. And when my grandson was 3 or 4, they were a new thing. They're not so new now. But I went out and put it on a tree, and he was fascinated. And I don't know if he knew it or not that I was standing behind the tree having the conversation with him. But he really got into this talking tree, and he couldn't wait till next time he came to our house to go see the talking tree. Now, along with that, at our house, we have campouts at our house, which means the kids get to sleep in the big closet next to our bedroom. And we have our indoor campout. Now, we do the s'mores downstairs, but we have our indoor campout at Grandma and Grandpa's house. We have hiding spots. Let's see, some of them. We have a hall tree that has a little flap. Sometimes that's a hiding spot. It'll be behind a couch or whatever. When they came to our house, when they were young, up until about age 6, the hiding spots were really, really cool to them, because every time they come to our house, the search was on, and they couldn't wait to break out of the car, run in the house, go looking. And these are for stuff you'd get at the dollar store. I'm talking about big presents. I'm just talking about an object of some sort, bubbles to blow, that sort of thing. But they'd be in their own hiding spot, and they would be identified with their name on it. It was kind of like Easter morning looking for their baskets each time, and it wasn't a big deal, but it was great to get them in the house and get them excited. Yoga by numbers. This is when my wife and my daughter-in-law were into doing yoga, and they still are, and the kids want to know why I wasn't into it, and so I said, okay, let's see what we can do with the numbers. So I had them get into positions, the numbers 1 through 10, and I took pictures of them in that position, okay? And that we made a booklet out of it they took home with them, and that's where was their yoga book, that they could show people they did yoga too. Scrabble Plus. You played Scrabble, maybe got little ones who are too small to play this game much now. And this works especially well if you got a difference in age, like 3 years apart, and you know the 7-year-old is going to crush the 4-year-old in the game. Well, my sons were Nick and Matt, and we had a special rule in our Scrabble games that were Matt words, okay? That he could, if he wanted to add on and put an extra X on it or J on it, it was okay. Because they were Matt words, and we could total up the points that way and try to work to keep the game competitive. So that's what I would say is Scrabble Plus. Okay, numbers become pictures. Well, I have to pass out a piece of paper. We're going to do something here. You thought you were not going to have to work, but that's not true. Each of you needs a piece of paper. And I'll give you each a black Sharpie. There's a container over there. First, I want you to use a black Sharpie. Now be careful that it doesn't soak through onto the tablecloth. I want you to write down a number on the bottom of this sheet, somewhere near the bottom, middle to the bottom. Write down a number from 1 to 10 with your Sharpie. Make it good sized, okay? And then rotate it a quarter around and make a bigger number from 1 to 10, a different one from 1 to 10. But you got to rotate your, yeah, that's good. Yeah, anywhere in there. You can do it anywhere. I said, could be at the bottom, could be in the middle. Okay, then we'll rotate it once more. We need another big number. Let's go from 1 to 20 with this next number. But make sure it's large. Okay, and then one last rotation. Do another number from 1 to 20. Okay, now, would you take that artwork you've done and pass it to the person on your right? I can take yours over here. Where we're going. Okay. Here's yours, and you pass that to her.
Wait a minute. She's got one.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Let me take this over here. She didn't get one, right? Okay. Did you send yours? Yeah, over here. Okay. Now, the new person, let me have those black Sharpies back. I want you to take some of these other colored Sharpies and try to make a picture out of the numbers that you've been given. Okay. Somehow figure out how you can put those numbers in a picture. Well, it could be one picture, it could be 4 pictures, but try to put them into a picture. I see somebody's already been working on it when she put them down. She was a step ahead of me. Okay, but see what you can do with those to make a picture out of them. All right, could it be a house? Could it be a chimney? Could it be a scene in nature? Could it be some animals? What do you got there? Okay, I see some great artwork going on here, and you can use all kinds of colors. You can sit here, we'll set you up. Okay, this is looking good. Boy, you guys are as good as my grandchildren.
You mean there's hope for us?
Yes, there's hope. Okay, when you're finished, and I'll give you another minute or so. When you're finished, we're going to hand this back to the person who started it. Now, what usually happens when I do it with my grandchildren, they pick out numbers, and we've gotten to the point where they kind of know what's coming, but they don't try to figure out what I'm going to do with it. Okay, and they'll put in a big number 7, and that'll be the beak of some sort of bird, or they'll put, at any rate, they're kind of curious of what I come up with. Okay, and there came a point where I got very predictable, and so then my granddaughter says, this time I want you to add something to it that I wouldn't expect. So on the bottom, after I've done all this drawing, I wrote in, and kiss your grandpa. And so now it's become a thing now. So whenever I tell a story or something like that, we always end up with, whatever the line is in the story I'm reading to her, and, Little Red Riding Hood finds her way back, and the last line is always, and kiss your grandpa. And by the time I get to that point, she's saying it with me, and then she gives me a kiss. Okay, let's pass these back to the original person. Now, no art criticism. Wait, did that come here? No? All right. Uh-oh. Did I mess up? All right, I'll take this back to the original owner. Okay. So you can see how that might work very well, or maybe total waste of time. Okay. Sing-along oldies, you probably do these in the radio, and you'd be surprised how little kids love the old songs, if it's something between you and them. And then they always like those little songs that you used to sing as a kid that you haven't sung in all those years, and all of a sudden you said, oh. And then you start singing that song from back when you were in school, And they love it because no one in their school knows that song. Foreign language storybooks. We were traveling in France once, and we were in Paris, and I went to this little bookstore, and we saw this book, Margot Lescargot. Okay, about a snail named Margot. And our grandson then was about 5 years old, and he hadn't taken any language, or there's not a family with a language background. And so we brought it home, and he loved to hear the French that my wife read. My wife didn't know what she was reading. She didn't know if she was pronouncing it right, but it sounded good to him. They loved this, and to be cuddled with his grandma and hearing these words gave him a great positive introduction to a foreign language. Okay? And it's kind of like the area, the ambiance affecting their first learning experience of that language, and it makes it a positive thing, even if they don't learn a single word. They usually like to pick up one word because they want to try and say it. And every time you see them, you hear that same word from the child. So my grandchildren have learned to say, I love you in a number of different languages. They haven't got much beyond that, or hi, or whatever, but at least their thought of it was positive. And every one of them, as they start a language, really likes to get into it. Share a hero story. Kids nowadays don't get to hear about our heroes. Not as much as we'd like them to. There's some great books written. There's a guy named Don Brown who takes on little heroes you may not have heard much of. I ran into one of the story he wrote was about Jim Thorpe. I happened to spend a lot of time studying Jim Thorpe, and Jim Thorpe's Indian name meant bright path, and so the title of Don Brown's book is Bright Path. It's a lovely picture book and extremely accurate about Thorpe's career and the issues that came up as he was working through the idea of a Native American being thrown into another culture and surviving and making it work, becoming world famous, and also the trials he went through as an adult. So I would suggest those are good to have. Near-miss punchlines. Why did a chicken cross the road? Okay? And then you come up with 12 different things that don't make any sense. And then the kids have to give you the right answer. All right? So every time they tell a joke, you accidentally get the wrong answer. All right? And you tease it out of them. The idea of making humor part of their life is really important, I think. Fill in the blank math. Okay? When math problems come up all the time. You're driving down the road. Oh, let's see, that's route, it's 3 miles to Penfield and 12 miles to Walworth. How far is that? Let me see. Is anybody, 3 and 12? Let's see, 12, 30. And by then, you're getting 15, Grandpa, come on, 15. Sometimes it's really great to be very slow. Add-on storytelling. And I think I gave this away a little bit before. You write a story, the first line of a story, and you hand it to child number 1. They add on to that. It's like a gossip game, only played in kid terms. Okay? Comes back to you, and you try to corral it back into a direction and say something, and then next person has it. And when you have a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old going, it can go all over the place. So basically, once you start it, it's basically getting the story back into some kind of context. When you finally get it done into a paragraph, we read it together and try to make sense out of it. Then we can modify it if we have to. Poems. When I was 5 years old, my sister was a senior in high school. She had an assignment to memorize a poem by Arthur Guterman. It's called Strictly Germ-Proof. And of course, she's trying to memorize this poem, and she keeps saying it over and over again. And for whatever reason, I was kind of attached to her then. And I kept hearing it, and it sounded so neat. Well, about 5 years ago, I was on the phone with her, and I said, "Hey, Joyce, what was the name of that poem?" And she didn't know the name, and she knew some of the words. So I went on the internet, one of the good uses of the internet, punched in some of the words, and it came up. And the poem goes like this. The antiseptic baby and a prophylactic cat were playing in the garden when a bunny gambled up. They looked upon that creature with a loathing undisguised, for it wasn't disinfected and it wasn't sterilized. They said it was a microbe and a hotbed of disease, so they steamed it in a vapor of 1,000 degrees. Then they froze it in the freezer as cold as banished hope and washed it in permanganate of carbonated soap. In sulfurated hydrogen, they steeped its wiggly ears and they trimmed its frisky whiskers with a pair of hard-boiled shears. Then they donned the rubber mittens, took it by the hand, and elected it a member of the fumigated band. Now there is no micrococcus in the garden where they play, for they bathe in pure iodoform a dozen times a day, and each imbibes his ration from a hygienic cup, the bunny, the baby, and the prophylactic pup. All right, now, if you were to, tell me something that a little kid, 5 years old, would recognize from that. They wouldn't know what any of the words meant, right? But they like the sound, they like the rhythm, okay? And it's kind of catchy. And if you're saying it to a 7 or 8 year old, you might say, well, you know, it's a poem about germ proofing. Well, what's germ proofing? Well, you know, some people are extremely concerned about getting the germs. You know, mom's got that stuff you squirt on your hands all the time, this sort of thing. You get in discussions about germs, about illness. I mean, it goes on and on. But this silly little poem, okay? And what I want to do, I want to give you a poem. I've got a half sheet of paper poem here somewhere. This one is by Ogden Nash. And I want you to take a minute to read this poem. And go through it and imagine yourself as a 5 or 6 or 7 year old who's having this told to them. Okay, so read through it and see what you think of it. And you're the person he identifies with it. Well, you know what? Every one of us has somebody when we were a little kid that we may have even forgotten who they were or whatever it was, but this one person took care of us, made us just feel kind of warm and fuzzy at some time. And if somebody said, well, look, if you're going back there, who would you go to see? And that name comes up, that one person who at the right time said something really sweet to us. In 3rd grade, I moved to a new town out in the country and went to a one-room schoolhouse. There were 13 kids. I was the youngest kid in the group. And the teacher was really, really old. She probably was younger than I am now, but she was really, really old. Her name was Miss Neiman. And I walked in and I said, oh, no, what have I gotten into, you know, in little kid language. And by the time we got to the 2nd or 3rd week, Miss Neiman realized my whole world revolved around sports. So my math lessons, in my part of the day when she was with me, were around batting averages. She learned about baseball. She learned about football so she could teach me. And I tell you, I think she's the reason I became a teacher. Because I saw the impact that one person doing something for a little kid at the right time can have. Anyway, let's get back to the poem. Thank you. I give you now Professor Twist, a conscientious scientist. Trustees exclaimed, he never bungles, and sent him off to distant jungles. One day he missed his loving bride. She had, his guide informed him later, been eaten by an alligator. Professor Twist could all but smile. You mean, he said, a crocodile? Okay, we got a guy who wants to get it right. Okay, he doesn't let you use the wrong term, okay, to the point of being ridiculous. All right, you're 5 or 6 years old. What's a question you're going to have when Grandma or Grandpa recites that poem to you?
What's the difference between an alligator and a crocodile?
Yeah, what's the difference between an alligator and a crocodile? Does anyone know what a trustee is? If you're that, what's a trustee? Okay, well, like colleges or people who run the college and they decide what the jobs are. All right. Bungles. What do you mean bungles? Okay. So we've got lots of words we can learn, and then we say it over again. We get the rhythm of it, get the feeling for it. And we start to like a little poem. Okay, that's the value of a silly poem. And kids then become more comfortable. And when they first walk into English class in high school and they start talking about poetry, this grandson is not going to say, oh man. He's going to kind of get a good feeling about it and be ready to try the challenge. Okay, the next section, construction projects. And I wish I could have brought them in with you, but I'll tell you about them. I do a lot with refrigerator boxes, and you can get them free if you're willing. You've got a vehicle big enough to put on the back. You have a large SUV or a pickup truck. Any of the appliance stores will be glad to give them to you. Just call them up and say, what day do you put them out back? Can I come and get one? They'll be glad to get rid of them. It's one less thing for their guy to tow away, as long as you don't leave a mess behind. But you can make them we made them into a ticket booth. And then I made up a bunch of tickets. Okay, and then the tickets, we made up places you go. Like, we didn't say Pittsford or whatever. I put Kalamazoo, Oklahoma City, you know, really different names of far off places. And so we'd go up and buy tickets from the kids. And they would sell us a ticket to one of those places, and we had a little hat, and they had their own little booth, their own little business. Punch and Judy Playhouse, I think we used the same one for that. I made puppet dolls for them, and doing a puppet show in the thing. And I could go out and buy one, but I'll tell you, when I do it, and they get to decorate it, I have a big box of those round chalks, and they do the coloring on the outside, and we cut some old towels into window dressings and that sort of thing. It's theirs. They own it. They build it. It wasn't just something went out and bought. And I think a lot of times it's so easy to go out and buy. And I'll tell you, most everything I buy and send to my grandchildren, the next spring is in my daughter-in-law's garage sale. You know, her house is full of that stuff. But the stuff we make seems to stick around for a while. A refrigerator box condominium, and you can do with a refrigerator box. You can do doorway, and we even had it at the time I did this one last summer. There was a stray cat or a feral cat in the neighborhood, and I knew there was a second one that looked like him, and the first one. See, what did the kids name him? Oh, first one they named Arrow. I don't know why. And then the second came by, and they didn't have a name for it. So I said, well, it's got to be Bo. If you got an arrow, you got. So we had Bo and Arrow. So they had two little doors in the bottom of the refrigerator thing. One was for Bo and one was for Arrow, which they never went into. But they had their own entrance into their house because they were an important part of their life at that time. We have not only our grandchildren, but we have, we call them surrogate grandchildren. This is a stairway going upstairs in my house. And Griffin, who's up at the top of the stairs, and that's Haley there and Kaylee. Haley and Kaylee are watching Griffin to see if his domino stunt is going to work and knock all the dominoes off going downstairs. And we had them lined up all around the house, and we got a box. They never play dominoes with them, but we got, every time I go to garage sale, we get more dominoes, put them in a big box, because they want to build these things, and they can be forever building these little things and see if they'll knock them over and work. Okay, so that's a domino tumble. This next one I did because these are my grandchildren's names. I got an old Scrabble set, and I was able to get the tiles and interlock their names. And that's hanging on the wall in what turns out to be most of the time the playroom at our house. So they, another one we do with the kids is making up, you know how they have Monopoly games for everywhere you go? Well, if we visit someplace together, like this summer we went to Alaska together, and we made an Alaskaopoly game. Now if you order online, try to buy one, it's like 70 bucks. But these kids know Monopoly boards so well that we took a big piece of cardboard and we drew the outline and put down the various, and Alaska's got some interesting places. You know, there's a town called College, and we say to kids, oh, we're going to college today, but you only can stay one day. Then you have to drop out. But anyway, they have around the board all the places they've been when you took a trip to that place, and we play Monopoly with that created board instead of a purchased one. Okay, Nerfus energy. Well, Nerfus energy, you know what Nerf balls are. And nervous energy, this is where I get back into my coaching thing. We want a lot of people are into teaching their kids how to be great athletes. And part of the situation that we have, especially in a very upscale town like Penfield and a very organized athletic place, is that we get kids in over their head too early sometimes, overcommitted to something. And one of the things is, for instance, there's a lot of discussion about heading a soccer ball and that sort of thing. Well, the idea of being able to catch a ball or judge a ball in the air is quite an advanced skill, and people just assume everybody can do it. And the one thing you do to scare kids away from sports really early is make a terrifying situation where you're telling a 5-year-old, I'm going to toss this thing, you're going to hit it with your head. Okay? And they can feel it. It's really hard. Whereas if you take a balloon and say, let's start with a balloon. So we use a little balloon, and they know where they can make the contact, where their hair starts to grow, and it's on a balloon. It's not on a hard soccer ball. Then they build up the confidence, well, I know I can hit it there, I'll try something a little hard. Well, in terms of playing catch, I know my granddaughters were all younger than my grandsons, and their grandsons would be playing ball, and they want to play ball too. And instead of giving them a baseball or even a tennis ball, if the first thing you try to catch with them is a Nerf ball, a sponge ball, even if they miss it and it hits them in the nose, it doesn't dent their nose, you know. So the idea of giving them an object that's really soft with ball skills, their first exposure to, is really important. And we got to be careful, because a lot of times us guys, we can't see the relationship. You know, we got to do it with a real thing. They've got to learn how to do it right. And sometimes you put them in a risky situation. So, sock ball hall wars. Now I've done this, my boys did this till probably they were 13. We have a hall in the middle of our house, this wide, 25 feet long. And young boys are pretty aggressive with each other. And I didn't want them throwing real objects at each other. But I said, okay, take your socks, wad them up, and you want to have it out? We'll close the door at that end, the door at this end, and you can throw them as hard as you want at each other. There's nothing hanging there, you go at it. So we let off steam with our sock ball wars between the two of them. Bocce Fest. Well, let's go. That's my wife and the granddaughter. It's not exactly a sock ball, but that's the hall where the event occurred, the crime occurred. And then Bocce Fest is next. All right. In the Bocce Fest, see that little girl left there on the ground? She's really a spectator to a game of bocce, and there are many more people here. Another granddaughter and 3 grandsons, and my 2 sons, we're all playing bocce. The thing about bocce is, it doesn't take a lot of dexterity or skill, and if you feel like you've got a 4-year-old who's trying to play with a 10-year-old, give the 4-year-old 2 chances with the 1 ball, whatever. You adopt the rules, okay? Bocce is a simple game, and everybody can learn the rules, and a 5-year-old isn't getting snookered by the older kid on changing the rules. They're very, very basic, okay? Sometimes if a child doesn't like the game in terms of playing it, they want to be the referee. They do the official measurements of how far away the bocce ball is. Everybody has or their official scorekeeper, this sort of thing. And everybody gets a role. But I think I picked bocce. You can pick any game that is really simple, but I like this one because it's new to every little kid. Not very many kids have a history with it. They haven't been playing Little League bocce and this sort of thing. It's something neutral for them. Okay, then we'll do some walks. This is my son Nick and 2 of his children, Jocelyn and Colson, out for a walk. You see there you have sticks. Well, those are walking sticks that I made. Now, I'm not very good with this stuff, but I got a limb long enough. I took all of the bark off it. I got a wood burning set, and now on it I put their birth date, their name, the baby name we used to call them, something that happened to them, a place they visited or whatever. Go all the way up and down the stick, their favorite flower or whatever I try to draw it on. And it's their own thing. Colson's 13 now, and that thing is still in his bedroom. It's a real important thing to him. Every one of my grandchildren has one of them, and my wife too, because she cried until she got one. But they all have one, okay? and it's their identity stick. And I put a crutch, a rubber crutch thing on the bottom of it so they wouldn't break up, you know. And it's for them, it's their own thing, and it's their own identity. It's part of who they are. And when they come to my house, I encourage them to bring any art they've done. And this is my garage art gallery. And I'm afraid at top, you can just see the bottom of, it's written Garage Art Gallery across there. And they can hang up any pictures they brought. Or this is, Jocelyn did, she had to do an ancestor, and my grandfather was a harness racer. He's in the Harness Racing Hall of Fame, and so she did his life story. He was an orphan, and she did his life story in a figure. And there's a sleeve there. She can stick her hand in, and she's reading the story in the back, but talking as if she's him. Anyway, permanently placed in my art gallery, in my garage. This is Harrison, who is a surrogate grandchild. He's a child of a girl who was friends with my boys when they were little. And that is a pencil drawing of a flower. And he laid down on his stomach on our sidewalk, looked at that flower, and drew it by pencil and filled it in. He spent almost an hour on it. And then they all put their name on them, so you know who they are, who the artist is. And anytime they come to my house, they've got a place where they've been recognized as an artist. Okay, we have long-term jigsaw puzzles. You know, in the corner of the one room, I'll start a jigsaw puzzle with them, but we never get them finished. I mean, we work on it, and then they come back, work on it. They may lose interest. We put it back in the box, try another one next. But it's something when they want quiet time, they want to be away from people, they want to just go do something by themselves, that's an option. All the places I've been, they can mark, we take the map, and they can mark the places on it that they've been. Again, this would hang in my garage, and they can tell us the trips and how they got there, and it's just a simple map of the United States, and when they've gone someplace, it becomes a big deal. It works for the boy across the street too, Josh. He's a sweet little boy, and when he was really young, we sent him postcards from our trips when we'd go someplace, and now he sends us postcards from his trip to Florida where he ate some alligator and a sort of, and he's been marking spots on our map when he comes back. Okay, down to homemade pasta. I don't know if you've ever, oh wait, here's another view of the walking sticks, Colson and myself in front of his house with his walking stick. And then here's the homemade pasta. Oops, pasta. Jocelyn and Colson, and got one of those machines, and they're responsible for making dinner with Grandma by doing the homemade pasta. Instead of going out and buying some pasta, we're going to do the homemade pasta. Okay. They are taking part in making dinner. Now, I call this part chow time because sometimes they become the chef, the waiter, the waitress. They create the menu, they deliver the food. Sometimes they get tips. But they are in charge, well, with a lot of help from my wife, they're in charge of dinner, okay? And they come in and take your order, and then they go back out to the cook in the kitchen, Grandma, and we figure out what's possible, and they help make it, deliver it, and clean up afterwards. They call it Alice's Restaurant. Okay, name your favorite food. Let's take a minute to do that. Maybe you can take that poem thing and turn it over, and think of when you were, think of a food you really like, and then rename it as if you were 6 years old or 7 years old. What would you call it? You know, think of a food you really like, steak or whatever, or spaghetti or whatever. What would you call it? Spaghetti's awfully hard to say anyway. What would you call it if you were naming it as a child? You know, if I'm naming spaghetti, I might call it worms and red sauce or whatever, you know. And let's get an idea of how that would be. Because the kids, if they, and all along the way, it doesn't happen all at once, but sometime will come when we realize they have something they really like, keep asking for it over and over again, whether it's grilled cheese or whatever. Oh, I remember when they were young, Grady called grilled cheese girled cheese. And it was accidental, but now it's stayed. The grilled cheese has stayed. So at our house, it's grilled cheese. And let the kids have ownership of what they call their favorite food. Okay, they call it, well, I'm not going to give you any words. You come up with them. What would you call that food? And again, we want to challenge this little kid to think, well, they call it thinking outside the box, but they're thinking on their own, using their imagination, what are they going to say it is? And it's something, again, they have ownership of a successful thing. They have named it. It's theirs. They own it. Okay. Then we have the Cookie Monsters making cookies. And this is most recently, Haley and Grady are making H's and G's at our house. And it's great because they get to taste how successful a cook they are. And the idea of getting them to cook is real important, I think. I raised 2 boys, and when they were in high school, they wanted to take girls to their prom, and I'd say, well, I can't afford that much. I'll tell you what, I'll pay for the car, I'll pay for the thing. I'm not paying for dinner, you got to figure it out. But I said, if you buy the food and you cook it here, you can use our house. And each one of them chose that option. And they'd put on, as if it was a French restaurant, and they'd put on the entire 4 or 5 course meal, okay? And it was so successful, according to reports I've had back, that in college, they used this technique with girls they really liked in college too, with similar success. But the problem was they got into it so much, and they happened to marry girls who can't cook. And now each one of them is the basic cook at their house because they knew how to cook one meal. Oh, you must know how to cook a lot of them. Yeah. So there's a trap with it too. But learning how to cook, I think, is really a significant gift to give them. Okay. Then I had the last, well, second last part actually, legacy. I think someone mentioned family connections and that, and learning from family history and that. We always go back to the same place and take a similar picture. This is a place in California near where some friends and my brother-in-law live. It's a redwood park. And it's a redwood park that my wife's family went to in the 40s, and we went in the 60s when we were just married. And so we go back to the same place and take the same picture. I've got a picture of my 5 grandchildren at Niagara Falls with a nondescript hotel in the background. But we're going to go back to that same place next summer, take the same picture, and then we'll go back 10 years from there, take the same. And it's kind of interesting to see how it works, where you can put people in your family in the same place, and it gives you connection to the people who were there first, and gives you a connection to your forebears. Hand-me-down clothes. We do some acting, playing roles like everybody did when you're a kid. You dress up and you play roles like that. But I think it's something we may have forgotten in the video games and all these other things. How neat it was just to dress up in adult clothes and play a game, that sort of thing. My son and my grandson and I. I'm a season ticket holder to the Buffalo Bills. You can feel sorry for me now. And every year we do one away trip, one road trip. This year we're going to Louisiana to see Alabama and LSU play. And then we're going over to Houston the next day to see the Bills play against Houston, where they're going to pull off an enormous upset. But it's the same gender road trip. The guys do it together. My wife does it with the granddaughters and the daughters-in-law, and they have certain trips they take together. It's their thing, and this is our thing. And I think it's a great connection to develop if you can do something like that, where the little boys are with the guys for a day and see what it's like to be with Dad and Grandpa and see what their relationship is and that sort of thing. And I think the same for little girls with Grandma and Mom. Secret sign language. You know, we talked about the importance of sign language as a second language for kids, but you can have secret sign languages between you and your grandchildren. Now, sometimes the parents won't like these secret sign languages, but we do them on the sly. We have a connection. And it's not hurtful anyway. It's just like saying, look, I'm always there. I know you may be off a little bit. Don't worry about it. We're always there. We're tight. You know, so you have some signals between yourself and whatever it may be. Whenever I see my grandchildren, I pick them up at school or something, they know that I'm going to point at them and say, hey, I know you. And a big grin comes out. I said it 100 times, but they always know that's coming. Okay, and it's our connection. Hand-me-down collectibles. Well, I got to take this off here. I only brought one of these with me, but it's a wheat bag. You know what a wheat bag is? Old penny that has the wheat on it. They stopped making them in the mid-50s. You'll find them once out of every 50 times you go to Wegmans, they'll give you them in change. Okay. My grandchildren think it's a gift of gold when I give them a wheat bag. Okay? And they collect them by the years. All right? And it can bring up a lot of interesting things. You know, the year that the coin was made, what happened that year? You know, and why are the 1943 ones not made out of copper? You know, what's the story there? It could be some stamps that you collect. It could be, I don't know, certain cards or whatever. You know, I guess a lot of us collected baseball cards when we were kids. Certain things. Half-year birthday cards. I don't think celebrating kids' birthday once a year is enough. I don't have to send them a present, but their 6-month birthday gets a card for me too. They made another half year, okay? So just kind of a selfish way to connect up with them, but they'll get a card. No present, but they'll get a card recognizing, I know that you're 6 months older, you're more mature. Antique learn and search. Let's take a look. All right, okay. Anyone know what that is? Well, I thought it was a hatchet, like an Indian hatchet or something, or Native American hatchet. I was at a garage sale up in Clarence, and I said, well, what is this? The guy said, I think it's a hatchet of some sort. He said, I found it out in the back of my, up in the barn 30 years ago, and it was in a barn sale. And I said, okay, well, I bought it from him, because I could tell it was 100 years old anyway, because of the patina, you know, and it's forged. So I knew it was something. But, so I called a guy down at the Museum of Science who's into these things, and he said, let me take a look at it. He looked at it, he said, well, I can tell you, it's not American Indian. He said, my guess is it came from Vietnam or Philippines, in that area. Okay? I go online, and I can't find anything like it. So I said to my grandson, Colson, my oldest grandson, he's 13, and he's into this, the shows that go out and, you know, the American Pickers, that kind of thing. You know, he's into that. So I said, hey, Colson, you know, I paid $40 for this. If you research it and find out it's worth more than that, and we sell it, you can have everything above $40. Okay. So he's been on a project for a couple of months now. I haven't gotten an updated report. But he's very anxious to get rich off of this artifact. And he's doing all the research. I can't do anything but win, you know. So the idea of getting him into something like that, I'm glad, because it gets him into history, it gets him into research, gets him into antiques maybe, developing something. Now lastly, he's at 13th birthday. Now I got to go to a bar mitzvah a few years ago. And in my background, there were no bar mitzvahs. And when I saw how great they treat a 13-year-old on this occasion, I said, every kid should have this kind of party at 13. This is what they need to recognize that they've gotten somewhere. They are someone special. They be recognized. And so I suggest that the 13th birthday party, as I did for Colson, is really, really important. Lastly, those notes, don't buy it, try it, refer to homemade traditions like May baskets. Anyone remember what it, all right, how many people know what a May basket is? Okay. There's a tradition going back hundreds of years in the United States that on the 1st of May, you make a little funnel basket with a handle on it, and you go to the person that you want to be sweet on, you go to their door, you hang it on their door handle, you knock on the door and you run. Slowly. Okay. You want to make sure you almost get away without being seen. All right, May basket. That's a tradition that, boy, I can't remember seeing it happen around here. That's a tradition I think should survive. It's something we could celebrate. And it's something we could reinstill in the kids. Paper airplanes. Folding a paper airplane and making it fly. That's not expensive. And it's something most of us have tried. And we don't have to be expert at it because the person you're teaching has never done it before. You would be the expert. Kites, making a homemade kite, making some stilts. They don't have to be real tall, and you don't have to worry that the Consumer Product Safety Administration is not going to come after you for because you did it in your backyard. So you cut out a couple pieces of wood, you attach them to a 2x4 that you split, and you've got some stilts. Traditional games, skipping stones. If I told you how many places in Alaska we skipped stones this summer, we set a record, I think. Finding a place you could send that stone the farthest. And just taking time to do that kind of thing with a kid. And no one seems to want to do that with kids. Now they want to have organized games in perfect fields with officials and the whole thing. Skipping stones can be fun. Kick the can. When I was a kid, that was a big game. You say, what's kick the can? The kid says, what's kick the can? Well, I don't know what it is. You know. And there are 100 of games like that. Clapping rhymes. My wife does those things with the girl. I was trying to, I don't know. And all of my granddaughters really get into it. Okay. If for some reason there's something appealing about that. Okay. Okay. I have one daughter. She's now 6 years old. She loves rocks. Okay. And I brought her a rock from Alaska. She didn't go with us. This is another granddaughter. And my wife asked her what she wanted for her birthday. She wanted a rock bag. So my wife made this bag out of this beautiful, pretty little bag, very feminine bag, that she can put her rock collection in and carry on. She knows that we know that she likes rocks, and we think it's great. Old postcards. I'm into old postcards. I'd like to pass that along to my kids. I go to a place, I take an old postcard that I know of a place that's significant. I go there, take the same picture. Okay. Went to Bermuda with my son's family last year and found this one church in Bermuda. It's a famous church with lots of steps. And I had a postcard. We went back, and my grandson took the same picture in the same place. Now, he hasn't decided that's something he really wants to do. So I think probably the experiment was a failure. But I don't know. Maybe I'll come back to it later. But collecting old postcards, Valentine's, don't go out and buy a Valentine card. Get an old Valentine postcard, put it in a general card, and they get something of history, something that's been there, something that's been a work of art, really. And then pressing flowers, pressing butterflies that have passed away, pressing four-leaf clovers. You can get those little presses for just a couple of bucks and teach the kids how to press. And this is what was done 100 years ago, and kids really liked it. They'll like it, and it's their own thing, and it's something other kids in neighborhoods aren't doing because it's unique to them. Okay, that concludes all I have to offer you. Any questions? Well, you know, it's basically, we felt we have a few years with them. Anytime we have vacation now, we plan with them because there's going to be a time very soon when they're going to have all these other things. They got all these sports and things they're doing now, but it's only going to get worse. They're going to be busy with everything, and that's good. But I want to get some time in them while I've got them there, you know. And basically, we think that we are their release valve. They're all very involved in lots of sports. They're really involved in school. They work really hard in school. Their parents have set great standards for them, and we think we're their chance just to let go, and we're their vacation, and we want them to be they know that every time we do one of these things, we've done something for them. It's nothing you get just that it's handed to you and take advantage of. They know that we've gone out of our way to do something special with them. And we're very insistent on the pleases and the thank yous and that sort of thing, and appreciating where things came from. But we want them to know that there's a comfort zone, and they can come and just relax and do what they want to do, basically within reason. And we're going to be there for them, which is what I'm sure everybody else feels with their grandchildren.
The teachers in their world.
Well, we all have an opinion about it. My opinion is that there's so many things to do and so many choices. There are a lot of other easier choices, but anytime we can integrate it. And when I mentioned the teacher who who would figure out batting averages with me, she took math and put it into my interest area. And sure, every time that we do something with them, we're going to try to figure out is there a way. And every time we challenge it, the difficulty we run into is if you have siblings, the older one always wants to give the answer. Okay? So we'll say, when you're doing like a math question, all right, here's a question just for Haley. Grady, I know you're probably going to get the answer, but this one we're going to see if Haley can get it and how she can do with it. Okay? But I also think that it's significant, especially now that I didn't expect to have any granddaughters. There were 9 boys and 1 girl in my family. My wife, there were 5 boys and 3 girls in her family. The odds were pretty strong that we were going to have a granddaughter. 3 out of 5 are girls. So I'm really interested in making sure they get a fair shake at trying the math. But anytime we can do it, and right now it's become such a thing where we challenge them that they'll come up with ways to challenge it too. They'll throw a math problem on me, and usually my slow response will get them to come up with some of the answers to it, but they will try to, and part of it is to make it fun. And sometimes if learning math is fun, I think they'll grab onto it. And they like to get things right. They like to work to get things right. And I think it's nice to build on that pride. Mm-hmm.
And that could be,
Well, I think that's, there's, like I said, a lot of other choices. Why would I want to do math if I can have a computer do it for me or something else,
nowadays.
Yeah, so it's part of how relevant or whether I can see I can use it down the road. When I was in high school and took Latin, I thought, oh, this is awful. But I've used that more than anything else when I've traveled someplace to figure out where I was, what I want to say, learn a little bit about the language, know what I'm doing. But I never thought that would be of interest to me. And, everything has to be of a time when they're ready to have it. And there's so many options, and I think a lot of kids are into just the fun of it.
Thank you. Excellent.
You're welcome.